Hey everyone, welcome back to Realpolitik. Today is May the 15th, 2023, and we're going to be talking about the latest developments in Ukraine. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe, help the channel grow. So let's get right into it. So President Zelensky has gone to Europe again, and he has met with the Pope at the Vatican, and he spoke with the Italian Premier in Rome. And he also went to Germany and spoke to Chancellor Scholz. And obviously, we know what he's doing, asking for more weapons. Now, the Russians have launched several Geron 2 drones, the Iranian Shahed 136, or as the Russians call it, the Geron 2. They've launched several dozen of them at various Ukrainian cities. Again, now, the Ukrainians are claiming that they shot down 18 of them, as well as several other drones, including Orlan 10s and a few Lancets. Now, in the city of Luhansk, for the third day in a row, the Ukrainians have again struck various Russian targets inside the city with the um, with with the Shadow Storm uh, stealth missile. So these are supplied by the UK, and basically yesterday the Russians actually retaliated to these strikes, and they struck targets deep inside western Ukraine, including in the city of Khmelinskiy and Ternopil, most notably. And I showed the footage yesterday, but for those who haven't seen it, this is what it ended up looking like in Khmelinskiy. So the Russians are claiming that they struck a massive stockpile of ammunition, and this, it turns out, it included the depleted uranium, the tank shells for the Challengers. So the radiation levels are increasing in Ternopil, from what I've heard. Now, so far it's just basically a rumor, but it could very well be true. I mean, this these explosions, there were several explosions that were basically just as big, huge mushroom clouds in those two cities. So obviously the Russians struck some kind of stockpile of ammunition or fuel or something. That is for sure. Anyways, so aside from that, let's look at Bakhmut and let's see what's going on in Bakhmut. I turn that down. I usually don't play the sound. I don't really want to get a copyright strike. And I assume most people don't even understand Russian. Now, of course, Bakhmut has been reduced to ruins, and the Russians are continually using the TOS flamethrower system, which can vaporize people, basically turning them into char, turning them into dust. And they're using the Fab 500 bombs, the GPS guided gliding bombs, and they have over 1,000 pounds of payload. So the Russians are basically firebombing anything that moves, all the Ukrainian positions remaining. Now, I mean, you can see that Bakhmut has been reduced to ruins. There's basically nothing left of the city. This is another video. And of course, you can see that there's nothing but ruins, and you can see the smoke rising from possible artillery or airstrikes. All right, let's take a look at some more footage. And in this footage, there's actually a tank firing at various positions. So the fighting in Bakhmut is extremely fierce, and as I'll show you in a second, the Ukrainians in Bakhmut itself. Now, a lot of you know the Ukrainians launched a counteroffensive several days ago in Bakhmut, and they've made some territorial gains slightly, but basically, in Bakhmut itself, Wagner is still advancing, and the Ukrainians a few days ago they controlled 2 square kilometers or less. Now they control something like less than, I would say, less than 1.25 square kilometers. So they're almost down to 1 square kilometer. The Ukrainians, they're really hanging on by a hair thread, and this was the Shadow Storm airstrike in Luhansk, just to show you what that's like. Oops. Anyways, this shows the road to Bakhmut, and you can see the Russians have lost physical control over these roads, but you can see what it means when they still have fire control. This is very recent, so still they're destroying a lot of the reinforcements and supplies being sent to Bakhmut. Now, let's take a look at Bakhmut itself, okay? This is the live UA map, and you can see that I've added the parts controlled by Russia. This map isn't always updated. And this little chunk right here and this long rectangular piece is the gains that the Russians have made in the last 24 hours. Now, there's news that has surfaced that the Russians lost 2 military commanders, one in the south right here, and I have his name. His name was Commander Makarov, somewhere around here. And there's another one, Colonel Brovko, was killed in and around Bakhmut itself. Now, as you can see, the Ukrainians don't have a lot of territory left. And let's take a look at this map right here by Rybar. The Russians, they've basically they've named the various sectors that are remaining. They've given them designations: Nest, Constructor, Dominoes, and Horse. And you can see the recent gains the Russians have made in the darker red. And the Domino sector is the last sector that where the Russians don't have any foothold at all. But that might change pretty soon. This map shows this from Wagner. It shows the recent gains in the last 4 or 5 days since the Ukrainians launched their counteroffensive. Now, it should be noted the Ukrainians have not taken any settlements, just open terrain, and it's mostly the Russians stepping back from that terrain. Now, let's take a look at the deep state map. That was the live UA map. And let's look at what the Ukrainians have been able to achieve. So, pretty much started on the 10th, or on the 15th right now. So they have made some notable gains. I should mention that, like I said, the most significant thing the Ukrainians have done is that they freed up this road right here, right? And this road right here, they've moved the Russians away from the roads. The Russians had physical control over this road. They still have pretty much physical control over this part of the road to the south. But in the north, it seems that they've lost physical control over the road. But regardless, you saw the footage of the road, so um, yeah. Basically, another thing I should mention is that when this counteroffensive began, a lot of analysts believed that the Russians would immediately step back from the salient because the Ukrainians attacked from the north and from the south in a pincer maneuver. And a lot of analysts believe that the Russians would fall back to just west of Klishivka because, as you can see, Klishivka, this is the topographical map. You can see there's a kind of a slope line here, which is the high ground, and it would make sense to fall back to a strong defensive position like that, right? But the Russians are actually holding out longer than expected. Um, so today, the Russians claim that they killed 400 Ukrainian soldiers in and around Bakhmut. They claim that the Ukrainians launched multiple offensives on multiple axes and that they were all pretty much repulsed. Now, a few days ago, there was a few videos that surfaced that showed piles of Ukrainian corpses with Russian soldiers standing over them. I can't show those videos because YouTube's community guidelines, but obviously not everything has gone according to plan for the Ukrainians. Now, if the Ukrainians, this is the thing in the big picture, if they can continue gaining territory at this pace, um, they they could end up maybe uh, with some significant gains, but obviously, I mean, if the numbers that the Russians are telling us are true, even if they're half true, I don't know how sustainable the Ukrainian counteroffensive would be because if they've lost, the Russians claim just today the Ukrainians lost 400 troops, 7 tanks, and 11 armored vehicles. I mean, if you cut that in half, even, how sustainable is it for the Ukrainians, considering that they haven't even taken a settlement yet, right? Now, here's the thing. In the north is where the Ukrainians have taken a decent chunk of land. But here's the thing. When you zoom out in the big picture, I mean, it's really insignificant. But obviously, the Ukrainians, what they want to do is they want to, uh, take this chunk of territory, move on to Klishivka. If they get to this road right here and then get to Opitne, they could threaten Bakhmut from the south. And then over here, if they could get to this road, then they would get to that same road from the north. And then they could basically try to they could threaten to encircle Bakhmut, right? That's the whole idea. But again, they haven't taken a settlement yet, but who knows? Only time will tell. But in the north, of course, now they're in kind of a little bit of a precarious situation, the Ukrainians, because as you can see, I've mentioned it before, there is um, there is a lake here, a reservoir here, and then you see a river that the Ukrainians would have to cross, and the lake and reservoir act as natural defensive barriers. And then there's a slope right here that the Russians occupy, which is gives them a nice vantage point, and it's the high ground. So the Russians have the high ground; they can see everything the Ukrainians are doing, and the Ukrainians have to not only cross this river, but this is a narrow gap they have to go through in between these bodies of water, and that makes them vulnerable because this is basically what you refer to as a choke point or a bottleneck, right? Anyways, only time will tell. So we're going to keep watching and see what happens. I will keep you updated. But anyways, guys, that's it for today. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.